Today's scripture reading is Genesis chapter 29, verses 31 through 32, and Genesis chapter 49, verses 3 to 4. Genesis chapter 29, verses 31 through 32. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, "It is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now." Genesis chapter 49, verses 3 to 4. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength, excelling in honor, excelling in power. Turbulent as the waters, you will no longer excel, for you went up onto your father's bed, onto my couch, and defiled it. Last Wednesday, we learned about the 12 sons of Jacob, or the 12 tribes of Israel, Genesis chapter 49. And today, we're going to be talking about the firstborn son, Reuben, the tribe of Reuben. Reuben, the Lord has seen my misery. Behold, a son. That's what Reuben means. Today, through the tribe of Reuben, I would like to look at God's redemptive administration. And I would like to share this grace with you today. Number one, the meaning of the name. In Genesis chapter 29, verses 31 through 32. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. Verse 32. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, "It is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now." In Genesis chapter 29, verse 25, chapter 29, verse 25, it says, "When morning came, there was Leah." Jacob was married to Rachel, right? Rachel was the one that was supposed to be married. But the father-in-law, he switched women. And after Jacob slept together, and in the morning he saw that it was not his beloved Rachel. But when we look at the Bible in Genesis chapter 29, verse 17, we see that his eyes are not very good. Leah's eyes are not very good. And after they slept together, we see that Leah, who Jacob did not hold in his heart, was next to him. So imagine his disappointment. So Jacob makes another 7-year contract, and 7 days later, Rachel was given to Jacob. So Rachel was given to Jacob in Genesis chapter 29, verses 25 through 27. And as I said before, in Genesis chapter 29, verse 17, Leah had weak eyes. But Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. In the New Translation, it says that Leah had weak and soft eyes, but Rachel had a very lovely figure and was beautiful. So Rachel was very beautiful and she had a very lovely figure. She had a very lovely figure and she was beautiful, which is recorded in the Bible. And excluding the woman in Haggai, excluding the woman that appears in Haggai, there is no one in the Bible that was praised in this way. Rachel, I'm talking about. Rachel had a lovely figure, and she was beautiful to see. No matter what type of man sees Rachel, although Leah is not staggered-eyed. She had soft eyes. So imagine no guys was attracted to her. Many philosophers and theologians that say that excluding the woman in Haggai, Rachel was the only one that received such praise in the Bible. Now, Leah, she had weak eyes. When you search the Bible, it said that she had very bad eyes. She had bad eyes. But in the new translation, it says that she has weak eyes and soft eyes. When we say weak, it was rak in Hebrew. It doesn't mean anything good. The word itself, rak, is not anything good. It means soft. It means weak. It's a bad meaning. I'm not saying this just to talk about this. Now, Rachel was beautiful and had a lovely figure. But Leah, she lacked a little bit behind Rachel. So when a man looks at Rachel, he becomes instantly attracted. But when he sees Leah, he's not very attracted to Leah. So Leah is, probably good at housework. But there's no attraction in the bed, in other words. So you sleep with Rachel and then Leah would do the housework. Now, I'm not trying to say this to make you laugh, but it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 10, undoubtedly there are all sorts of languages in the world, yet none of them is without meaning. So 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 10 is not a lie. So everything has meaning, so we must listen carefully. So the elder sister is receiving less love than the younger sister. It says when the Lord saw that Leah was not loved. But Rachel, although she is loved, she has no children. She is childless. Reuben's name means, behold, a son. Imagine how much love Leah lacked from her husband that she said after that she saw her son, that behold, a son. Finally, my husband will love me because I have a son. That's what Reuben means. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, Leah, she was losing in the battle of love. Older sister, younger sister. Older sister was losing the battle of love. And Jacob only would enter into Rachel's tent and not into Leah's tent. So imagine as a woman how heavy-hearted the situation is, not being loved by the husband, and she's pregnant. And she finally has a son and says, wow, because of this son, I'll finally receive love from my husband. In other words, Reuben was the source of love for Leah. Reuben was like the word of redemption for Leah. It was a message of hope. Behold, a son. let's look at Jacob's blessing in Genesis chapter 49, verses 3 to 4. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength, excelling in honor and excelling in power. Turbulent as the waters, you will no longer excel. So the water is turbulent, just as when water boils. Although you're excelling in power and excelling in honor, you're like this turbulent water. This is not a good saying. Turbulent as the waters, you will no longer excel. For you went up onto your father's bed, onto my couch, and defiled it. Genesis chapter 49, verses 3 to 4. We see that Jacob tells his son Reuben, look at the blessings that Jacob received from God that he was supposed to give to his children, right? You're my firstborn, firstborn, firstborn. It's recorded 5 times. My firstborn, my might, first sign of my strength. You're the first sign of my strength. Excelling in honor. And 5th, excelling in power. We see here that Reuben, the firstborn, was expected to do many things. Jacob expected many things from his firstborn son Reuben, but he was disappointed. When the father left for a moment, the older son Reuben slept with his mother. So just like this turbulent water. So what can you do when God is the one that said to bless Reuben in this way? You are excellent, excelling in honor, excelling in power. In honor. In Korean, it's 2 words put together. It's honor and light. It means the authority and power that cannot be overcome. And then transcendence, to transcend, to overcome, to jump over. It is to overcome the status of being physical. Now, I'll be speaking about the firstborn rights that the firstborn has during the age of the patriarchs. They were excelling in honor and excelling in power. During the time of the patriarchs, the firstborns had the right to, number 1, the rights of the high priest. Exodus chapter 29, verse 9. Secondly, they had the authority over the family. He had the authority over the family. Number 3, he had authority in war. He represented the family. He has the authority to represent the family during war. So Reuben received love from Leah, and he received love as the firstborn son, and there were many things that were expected of him. After they had the son, we see that Jacob sees Reuben saying he is excelling in honor, excelling in power as the firstborn. He had so many shoes to fill that he could have filled. However, he failed. Because of what? Because he was as turbulent as the water. So, what type of water do you think was turbulent? Turbulent waters like boiling water. When you try to eat ramen, you boil some water. And you boil the water. That's like this turbulent water. So he himself could not gain himself. He couldn't gain himself. Now, in the Korean saying, they say that if you put a dress on a stone pillar, there will be people, there will be men who mistake it as a girl and would get in trouble. That's how turbulent of water it is. It refers to eroticism. Number one, there is no stability. Number two, live a chaotic life, always within anxiety, panting like a dog, unable to overcome the desires of eroticism. Reuben's life was unstable. He looked at his stepmother. You know, they're not biological mother, but still is a mother, right? So there was no order in Reuben. So when Jacob was praying to God about the 12 blessings he should give to his children, and God told him, hey, Reuben, you should curse him. You should curse Reuben. There is no stability. Always unstable and chaotic. Reuben's life was unstable. It was always changing. In Genesis chapter 49, verse 4, it shows the new translation. It says, you are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength, excelling in honor and excelling in power. So he's reading a new translated version, which is not in English. So the eldest son, Reuben, is like this flowing water that's exploding out from a pipe. Like an uncontrollable flood. And ultimately cannot accomplish the works of her firstborn because he climbed into the father's bed and defiled it. Even the couch. Listen carefully. In Ezekiel chapter 23, verse 20, it says, there she lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys. Now, and whose emission was like that of horses. So his genitals are like those of a donkey, and whose emissions was like that of a horse. That was who Reuben was. So he lost the firstborn rights. The Bible does not hide or gift wrap any part of a person's life. The world hides everything, right? They try to hide all the embarrassing information and beautifies the outer image. But the Bible records just as it happened. Like I said before, in Jesus' genealogy, there are prostitutes, there are men who slept with their daughter in laws, there are people who do not know who their children's fathers are. The Bible does not hide this information. In Jesus' genealogy, there are 4 women that are recorded. Now, Jesus, he didn't just simply come to this world, but he followed the lineage of faith. He followed the path of faith. If, let's say, a faithful becomes unfaithful, then he'll switch paths. He'll find a faithful person. Jesus, he wasn't just thrown into this world, but he came through the lineage of Abraham and Isaac. From Abraham all the way to Jesus Christ is 42 generations. Among the 42 generations, there were many people who failed. There are people who were bankrupt. There are people who died in war. There is people who are Gentiles. So Jesus, until his moment of hanging on the cross on Golgotha, he loved all the world with the agape love of the Father. So how can we not believe in Jesus Christ? Jesus came seeking us, walking such a path. So when we think of that process, should we not be grateful to him? We must have a heart of living for Christ. It's not an easy thing. Why is Genesis chapter 49 recorded if it has nothing to do with redemptive history? In your genealogy, let's say there's a prostitute, there's a there are people who don't know who their parents are. Would you put that information in the genealogy? My mother, she works in a liquor store or a whorehouse, and I don't know who my father is. Let's say you were in such an environment. Would you advertise that? No. But the Bible speaks of this loudly. Jesus had a prostitute in his lineage, in his as one of his ancestors. Jesus had in his lineage a man who slept with his daughter-in-law. Judah slept with Tamar, right, his daughter-in-law. Would you advertise that in your family? No, you wouldn't. So it's an embarrassment to God Do you think God recorded this so he can be humiliated? Look how dirty the world is. Jesus saying, everyone, come to me. Whether you're a prostitute, whether you're an orphan, come to me. Whether you're a Gentile, whether you're an educated man or an uneducated man, come to me. Jesus came to save everyone. How grateful should we be to God? Reuben, even though he had the position and authority to take a hold of his firstborn rights, he was unable to do so. Reuben was always boiling. He was always excited. In Genesis chapter 35, 16 to 22, he had relations with his father's concubine, his mother essentially. He was beating her too. Imagine how strong Reuben was. Now, Bilhah was Rachel's body servant, and Reuben had relations with her. So his name is Bilhah, Rachel's body servant. Who was Jacob's concubine. And Reuben basically had relations with her, beating her. Reuben tried to hide his sins until the end. But when that news entered into Jacob's ears, in Genesis chapter 35, verse 22, Jacob heard this when he was not home, that his son had relations with his concubine. Imagine Reuben, who Jacob held in his heart as his firstborn. When God told Jacob to bless Reuben, he told him to bless him in such way, just as God told him Jacob. And so Jacob gave that blessing directly. Reuben was a son of Leah who was not loved. But in Genesis chapter 21, Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 15 through 17, the Bible, whenever recording Reuben, always says that he was the firstborn of Israel. However, he was not regarded as the firstborn. We'll read 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verses 1 through 2. The sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel. It tells why Reuben lost the firstborn rights. 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verses 1 through 2. The sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel. He was the firstborn, but when he defiled his father's marriage bed, his rights as firstborn were given to the sons of Joseph's son of Israel. So, he could not be listed in the genealogical record in accordance with his birthright.